Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. Leaders of the G8, the group of 8 leading industrialized nations, are gathering at Camp David for a 2-day summit beginning Friday. The European economic crisis is expected to top the agenda as fears grow the Eurozone could be unraveling. Greek voters will soon head to the polls for another round of elections, which will be viewed by many as a referendum on the euro. Meanwhile, France's new finance minister has reiterated the country's new socialist government will not ratify the European Union's fiscal pact calling for greater austerity. A fight over austerity is also brewing in Washington. House Speaker John Boehner's revived the Republicans' hardline stance on the debt ceiling.
We should not raise the debt ceiling without real spending cuts and reforms that exceed the amount of the debt limit increase. Now, from all the way up in Midtown Manhattan, I could hear the great wailing and gnashing of teeth. And over the next couple of months, I was asked again and again if I would yield on my position, that if I would budge. Each and every time, I said no, because it isn't a position, it's a principle. Not just that it's the right thing to do, it is the right thing to do. When the time comes, I will again insist on my simple principle of cuts and reforms greater than the debt limit increase.
A similar move from Boehner and House Republicans last year nearly brought about a U.S. default on its national debt. Well, for the remainder of the hour, we're joined now by one of the world's leading economists, Paul Krugman. He's Nobel Prize-winning economist, op-ed columnist for the New York Times, also professor of economics at Princeton University and centenary professor at the London School of Economics. His latest book is End This Depression Now. Paul Krugman, welcome back to Democracy Now!
Good morning.
How do we end this depression now?
Spend. I mean, it's actually, the economics is really easy. If we were to spend more money at the government level, and actually at this point largely just rehire those school teachers, firefighters, police officers who've been laid off in the last several years because of cutbacks at the state and local level, we would be a long way back towards full employment. Other things to do, we could talk about monetary policy, debt relief for homeowners and students, but the core of it is right now there just is not enough spending. And we need the government, which can do it, to step in and provide the demand we need.
To say the least, you're going against the accepted dogma on all television among the so-called leaders of our country. Spend in a time when the government has the debt the size it has?
Right. So you can always say, oh, you know, $14 trillion. Everything about the U.S. economy is huge. Investors don't think it's a problem. Investors are willing to lend the U.S. government money at 1.8% interest. This is not the time. I'll be all for worrying about the budget deficit once the economy is off the bottom. But it is not off the bottom. We are in a depression. This is the time to spend.
Where do you get the money?
Borrow it. And then repay it later in better times, which is not at all. That may sound funny, but that's exactly what we've done in the past. That's exactly how did we get out of the Great Depression? We got out of it actually we got out of it before World War II, but thanks to the spending that preceded World War II, thanks to the military buildup. A little factoid, people may not know. Just this morning, which of the major economies in the advanced world grew fastest in the first quarter of 2012? The surprise answer is Japan. Why is that happening? It's because Japan is now spending a lot of money reconstructing after the tsunami. And that spending is driving rapid growth in Japan right now. We could all be doing that.
Let's go to Mitt Romney for a moment. The presidential candidate's economic plans and his critique of the Obama White House. This is what he said Wednesday at a campaign stop in Iowa.
President Obama is an old-school liberal whose first instinct is to see free enterprise as the villain and government as the hero. America counted on President Obama to rescue the economy, to tame the deficit, and help create jobs. Instead, he bailed out the public sector, gave billions of your dollars to companies of his friends, and added almost as much debt to this country as all the prior presidents combined. The consequence is that we are now enduring the most tepid recovery in modern history.
Your response to Mitt Romney, Paul Krugman.
Boy, you don't even know where to start. I mean, Romney's technique is that since basically every word he says is a lie, including a, and the, you never know where to start. But this is the idea that first of all, that Obama is responsible for the large deficits is just not true. It's overwhelmingly the result of Bush tax cuts, unfunded wars, and a terrible economic crisis that began, of course, under Bush. The idea that the deficits are what's holding us back is all wrong. The deficits are, in fact, what's keeping us afloat. If we had tried to balance the budget, we would now be in a full-on replay of the Great Depression. So it's all nonsense. And by the way, the idea of Obama as somebody who governs from the left. I mean, Obama's positions are those of a moderate Republican circa 1992. It's not. He's not a leftist. What's happening now is you have a radical right Republican Party.
Well, let's talk about the Republicans. House Speaker John Boehner recently addressed the Peter G. Peterson Foundation's 2012 Fiscal Summit.
The failure of stimulus, a word people in Washington refuse to say anymore, has sparked a rebellion against overspending, overtaxation, and overregulation. Americans who take pride in living on a budget recognize that we can't go on spending money that we don't have, and our economy is stuck in large part because it is stuck with debt.
House Speaker Boehner also advocated making long-term changes to programs such as Social Security.
We could eliminate all the unfunded liabilities in Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid tomorrow, and the effect on the congressional budget 10-year window could be minimal. That's because changes to these programs take time and need to be phased in slowly.
That's House Speaker Boehner, who's also just revived the debt ceiling threat.
Yeah. So, boy, again, let's leave aside the long-run budget stuff at the moment. Let's just talk about the idea that stimulus failed. It was never tried. Take a look at the actual track of government spending in the United States and take into account the state and local governments as well as the federal. And what you see is far from actually having a big increase in spending. We've actually had much lower. We've had austerity in the face of a recession in a way that we have never had before since the 1930s. So it's actually been the reverse. And look, we've just done an experiment with what happens if you cut government spending sharply in the face of a depressed economy. That's what's been going on in Europe. It's been going on in an extreme form. I've been saying, actually, we've basically had a large-scale human experiment, the kind that is banned under Princeton University rules, going on the people of Greece, Spain, Portugal, and Ireland. And the results are clear. It's disastrous. It leads to a very, very sharp economic contractions. Here we're having a minor version, though still terrible, of the Great Depression. There they're having a full-on replay of the Great Depression.
Contrast it with Argentina.
Argentina is an interesting story because they broke all the rules. There are two countries that we talk about now, actually, people like me. One is Argentina. Argentina had something that was a little bit like the euro. They had a supposedly permanent commitment, 1 peso, $1. Became impossible, fell apart. There was a period of about 6 months of economic chaos following, to be honest. Then a rapid recovery. Argentina bounced back strongly because they were competitive again. The weaker peso made them able to export, and they defied all the predictions of ruin. The other story, which is more contemporary, is Iceland, which in effect did the same thing. Iceland, because the funny thing is Iceland, the sheer scale of the financial disaster meant that they could not be orthodox. It was not possible. So they were forced to allow a devaluation, have some temporary controls on capital, repudiate some of the debt their bankers ran up. Iceland has a lower unemployment rate than we do right now. So those are the stories that we should be looking to as examples that say this does not have to be happening.
So right now, President Krugman, and that's not making a mistake. What do you do starting today?
So the question, of course, is what do I have in the way of Congress, right? So I'm actually at this point. I have a lot of.
Kucinich is not going to be running again. Right.
No, I have a lot of criticisms. I was tearing my hair out during the first year of the Obama administration because I thought they were, they had to act much more strongly than they did. But that's water under the bridge. Right now, the reality is, I think that President Obama gets a lot of this. Maybe not all of it. He gets a lot of it. But he has limited room for maneuver because of a hostile Congress. If we didn't have that, first thing to do is a big slug of aid to state and local governments so they can rehire those school teachers, get back to repairing the roads. Right there, you have, by my rough math, you have enough to get the unemployment rate down to something like 6.5%. So get it for, right there, you can get us to a dramatically better economic situation. Mortgage debt relief. Federal Reserve can do more stuff. We could end this. We could be out of depression territory. We could be, if not something that would feel much more like full employment in 18 months to 2 years. It could be over faster than you believe. So it's actually, the economics are really simple. This would be almost amazingly easy. Of course, the politics are very difficult, but that's a different story.
Let me talk about the Jobs Act for a second. I want to ask you your thoughts on this legislation, but first I want to go to President Obama speaking the day he signed the bill.
And for startups and small businesses, this bill is a potential game changer. Right now, you can only turn to a limited group of investors, including banks and wealthy individuals, to get funding. Laws that are nearly 8 decades old make it impossible for others to invest. But a lot's changed in 80 years, and it's time our laws did as well. Because of this bill, startups and small business will now have access to a big new pool of potential investors, namely the American people. For the first time, ordinary Americans will be able to go online and invest in entrepreneurs that they believe in.
Paul Krugman, your response.
I mean, people who've studied it carefully that I trust say this is actually a really bad bill. It's creating loopholes. It's just not doing anything productive. And there's this fetishism of small businesses. The idea that the problem with our economy right now is that people can't afford to do startups. That's not the problem. The problem with our economy right now is that there's not enough demand from consumers, from the government to make it worth expanding. So this is all a great diversion. Probably a bad bill just in and of itself, but the main point is this has nothing to do with the real problem. I'm willing to cut the president some slack. I think he has to assuage people's prejudices a little bit, although I wish he would be a bit more forthright about what the real problems are. But this is not it.
Can you talk about the title of your book, End This Depression Now, which, of course, I think is psychological as well as economic, the play on that. And you dedicate your book to the unemployed, you say, who deserve better. How many unemployed there are? What are the real numbers? How are we in this mess?
Okay. I'm tempted to get way too wonkish here, so let's try not to. So there's 13 million official unemployed. That number is both too low and too high. Some of the people, we always have some unemployment. There's always some thrashing. So even if things were much better, we would probably have 5 or 6 million at least people who would be counted as unemployed. On the other hand, there's a large number of people who you're only counted as unemployed if you're actively looking for work. There's lots of people who are not because they know there's no work to be found. There's lots of people who are involuntarily working part-time. There's lots of people who are working in jobs that don't make any use of their skills. There's an awful lot of college students with huge burdens of debt and working as baristas because that's all they can find. So probably the real number, something like a third of the American population either are themselves or someone close to them is suffering from this economy in a very direct way. So it's a huge number. The things that really get me are that we have almost 4 million people who've been out of work for more than a year. That's complete. You have to go back to the 1930s to find anything like that. That's destroyed. That destroys lives. That destroys families. That destroys people's long-run prospects for ever getting back to work. We have an incredible drop in employment among recent graduates. That's the thing. So the exact number doesn't really, we can argue, it doesn't matter. The point is this is horrific. This is an ongoing human disaster. It's an ongoing economic disaster, and it's crippling our future. It's not just short-run pain. So this is, and that's one of the reasons I use the word depression, because this really is that bad.
You also talk, Paul Krugman, about even when unemployment goes down, that unemployment benefits are really going down.
That's right. People have been dropping off. We had extended unemployment benefits, which were created, as they should be, during a period of a severe economic downturn. But those have been cut back way faster. I mean, the unemployment benefits were extended because we realized that there were going to be a lot of people experiencing longer than normal spells of unemployment. Those are being cut back rapidly, but the long-term unemployment has not come down hardly at all. It's fallen from 4 million to 3.9 million people who've been out of work for more than a year. So this is just cruelty. And it also depresses the economy because it's taking money out of the hands of people who would spend it. So it's amazing to me how quickly our political system has turned towards blaming the victims of this depression.
Paul Krugman, questions are coming in Facebook and Twitter in droves. We ask listeners and viewers to send these questions to you. Kristen Franks has just written this on Twitter. Mr. Krugman, can you please explain subprime economics and how compounding interest is legal when dealing with student loan debt agency?
No, I mean, I mean, compound. All right, interest will compound. The problem is not this. This is going to happen with any kind of loan. The problem is that two things. One is that the student loan game has been a disaster. We've privatized what is basically a public function. We have basically taxpayers' money on the line in the form of guarantees, but we've run it through private sector middlemen for no reason. So it's been way more expensive than it should be. And in any case, we should be providing adequate aid so that a college education is affordable for any student with the aptitude, whatever his or her social class. That's what we used to do mostly. We used to have good public universities that were affordable, but the aid has been cut back so much that they no longer are. We are now getting pretty much unique among advanced countries in being a place where a college education is only something that's available if you come from the right class. So that's the issue, not the details of the student loan.
Okay, Elizabeth Bishop has just tweeted with this question, quote, how has Occupy shifted public consciousness?
I think Occupy did a great service. Because obviously I'm in the midst of this all the time. I'm tracking the pulse of the debate way too much. And in the last summer, it was all deficits, debt. It was all, the whole thing, if you like, Pete Peterson was defining the whole terms of the debate, right? And then this scruffy group of people set up camp in Zuccotti Park and other places around the country. And somehow that changed. Everyone said, hey, inequality, injustice, the failure to deliver employment, those are the immediate problems. Those are the things we should be talking about. It didn't change everything, obviously, but it had a tremendous, it was like somebody, it was basically the emperor was wearing no clothes moment on our economic debate. I thought it was enormously productive.
So let's go from Occupy